and welcome to episode 15 of the Time to Calibrate podcast. I'm Mark Levesque. Co-hosting with me today are Brent Rubiar from the Calibrated Wrist and Bob Alaby from the Time to Go Travel and Timepieces YouTube channel. Now, we're very fortunate today to have with us an industry veteran that has worn multiple hats over his career. He's worked in journalism, retail, consulting, even auctions. Today, he's the head of Massena LAB, which is a sister company of Massena House. However, my earliest recollection of his work was on Timezone.com, where we both participated a whole bunch. William Massena, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Now, just like many podcasts or watch podcasts, we normally start off with a wrist check. And since you're the guest of honor, what's on your wrist, William?
I'm wearing, I don't know if you can see it. It's Minerva from the 50s, an 18-karat rose gold mono pusher. It comes with 13 linear movement, which they use still today with Mont Blanc. You know, they have those mono pusher chronograph. So that's one of the early ones early one, the movement comes from the 20s, but that's one of the early wristwatches that they made with it in the 50s.
Beautiful.
Well, I guess you win. We don't have to do our checks now. Fantastic watch.
I didn't even think about it this morning. I'm going to stay home all day and I would think about wearing that. So.
Brent, what about you?
Well, this morning, actually, I am wearing the Elliott Brown Holton Auto GMT. These are some guys that we met in Toronto at the Toronto Timepiece Show. I guess I'd been introduced to their brand probably about a year earlier through Jason Heaton of the Great NATO podcast. And it was a real pleasure to meet them. And because they're going to be in Vancouver, they sent along a couple of pieces for me to take a look at. One was this, and the other is their Beachmaster Nevo. I'm a real big fan. Obviously, I'm a tool watch kind of guy, so really, really enjoying the time that I get with this one.
Yeah, I saw it this morning on Instagram. It looks really good.
Thanks.
What about you, Bob?
So I'm actually wearing a brand also that's going to be at the Vancouver show, a new company out of Los Angeles, Camp Watch Co., the Field Timer. Pretty cool dial. They've applied, I think it's like 8 layers of a clear lacquer on top of the dial, and then the markers and all the print work on top of that. So it has sort of a floating effect, kind of a neat take on a field watch. So yeah, that's what I have on today. And it matches my shirt too.
That's the most important thing. The most important
for sure. I've got my Isotope Hydrium California on the leather bracelet that was supplied with the watch. One of my favorite watches, always makes me smile every time I wear it. Great piece.
I love those guys. They do a great job.
Yeah, Jose is a fantastic guy. He's a good friend of the show, good friend of ours. So before we start, I want to talk a bit about the old days. Now, on Timezone, in the late 1990s, William and I had a mutual friend by the name of Terry T-Bone.
Oh, yeah.
He would do a weekly wrap-up on Sundays where he would poke fun of whatever happened during the week. And he was a brilliant writer and just a really funny guy. And so I've got this little snippet from March 15th, 1999, where he mentions our guest. So I'm just going to read that out here. So I see William Massena was feeling much better this week after hitting a 30-year watch low on Saturday. If this guy can't get wood over a watch, who can? Seems he is going to have to spend all day sitting at a table with Dowling, surrounded by all those Rolexes. This could have indeed brought about a mild depression. To boost his spirits, Michael Friedberg posted a scan of an old military piece, Mildred, I think he was, and he got right turgid. He felt so much better by Tuesday that he and Hans gave us lessons on how to pronounce lang and Nardin and Tutima. Glad to see you're feeling better, William. It unnerves me a little when guys like you get depressed. Now, if some of you guys don't recognize some of those names, Michael Friedberg went on to work for IWC. James Dowling, a.k.a. Mr. Rolex, needs no introduction really because he kind of wrote the book on the subject. And unfortunately, Hans Zbinden passed away in 2016. He was one of the pioneers of online watch enthusiasm and a mentor to many of us. He also has the distinction of having posted the very first ever online watch picture on a forum.
Yeah. It was an offshore, Viaduct offshore.
Yeah. And then we used to call them scans because this is before or at the very verging photography, digital photography. And many of us, myself included, used to lie watches on a flatbed scanner with the lid of a watch box on top of it as a light box and then scan the watch and then post it on Timezone using HTML codes that we had to know by heart because there was no uploading pictures. You had to find a hosting site like Photo Bucket, but Zing or some other one. And we call them scans. And you post the title and you put little parentheses and put scan, and that would be in there. So, William,
by the way, you still have to post codes and you still have to find a host with a picture.
Yeah, Timezone's still stuck in the 90s, which is fine. It's charming, but it's not what it used to be. That's for sure. So, William, do you still think about those early years in the internet watch community?
Yeah, well, first I ran into Terry maybe 2 or 3 years ago in Geneva. He was there doing Watch and Wonders, and I kind of recall old memories. But do I remember Timezone? Absolutely. Timezone was a youth school. You have Timezone people, and they went to Timezone University in a certain way. And I feel I got my PhD at timezone.com, and as a watch guy. Yeah, of course, Timezone will always be with me. I mean, I managed the site for nearly 15 years. Very important place for me. Yeah,
it was the same for me. I started on there in 98, probably. And, back then, you didn't just jump in with 2 feet. There were people with a lot more experience and more knowledge, and you spent time listening and reading and, maybe asking questions. And it took me maybe a year before I really participated and became a personality on the site. And people like you, like Richard Page, and a bunch of other people that are just really great writers and great educators, and the enthusiasm was very different. It was a different community, and I loved it back then, very much so.
Yeah, I liked it too. It's very different. I mean, you cannot really compare to today. But it was the prehistoric years of watch collecting on the internet, and in a certain way, I'm very happy I was part of it, and it obviously contributed to my my life, at least my watch collecting life. Now it's a big important part of it.
Yeah. Do you have any favorite memories or stories from those old days? Maybe like the Rolex wars back then, or you mentioned Terry before. Do you still keep in touch with Richard sometimes?
I haven't talked to Richard in maybe 10 years, maybe 7 or 10 years. He's doing watches again. He's back at doing watches. But I haven't talked to him in a long time. I think the last time we talked was maybe 10 years ago when he was launching his brand, or he was launching a new brand. My favorite memory of Timezone is actually a weird memory. We were in Basel I think it was 1999. And you guys have to understand that in the old days, the Basel world didn't like us. The internet was pornography. That was what the Swiss thought. It was just a little fair, a little thing that was going to pass away, and that we're going to go back to, the old days. So we were not really welcome at Basel World. The public was, had access, and we were like part of the public, but we didn't have access to the booth, and they would basically ban us from coming in and asking for stuff or making appointments. And 1 year, Gunther Blumlein, who was the CEO of Lange, and that was the year that he was also the CEO of IWC and of Jaeger LeCoultre. And 1 year, I think it was in 99, maybe it was in 98, I'm not sure. He invited us in the booth, and we were all shocked. Friedberg was there, obviously. Hans was there. There were other people. I don't remember who. Michael Hickox was there. Like a few collectors were there, and we entered the booth. And I remember we thought that maybe those guys were going to kidnap us because we were more about, maybe they were going to kill us. We didn't know. And they offered us champagne. I would always remember this. They offered us a glass of champagne, and we looked at each other and we were like, should we drink this? And they sat us down and they started showing us the collection. And we were like, shit, we made it, And I have to give credit to the late Gunther Blumlein for doing this. And then, then Lange was one of the first brands to advertise on Timezone. Lange and another guy that has to be mentioned, Biver. Biver was also a big contributor to Timezone. They were buying an ad on Timezone for $500 a year, and he had a contract, a forever contract, $400 a year forever. And when he left, Blancpain, the new guy in charge, said, I don't want to advertise anymore. I was so happy because
You move that space to someone else.
Yes. So this is my current souvenir.
Yeah. So from 2006 to 2020, you were the managing director of that site, Timezone.com. And you lived through a lot of changes with the emergence of What You Seek, blogs, and all shapes and sorts of media and social media otherwise. How is it working for Ashford.com and dealing with all that change? Was there a lot of pressure for you to drive traffic?
So no, let's go back. So Page owned the website in 1998, and so Timezone was first owned by a Singaporean website that was a Rolex dealer, and the site was bombed in 1996. Somebody came and basically did a DOS attack on Timezone. They shut it down. They had a lot of pressure. They were Rolex dealers. They had a lot of pressure from Rolex to get rid of Timezone. There were like 15 of us at the time. So Page bought it, and immediately Page used it to promote his store. He had a store in San Francisco called Paris 1925, and it was promoting his brand. And then obviously the .com years came up, and he thought that he would sell it for a lot of money. And he tried first eBay, and they were very close to a deal. And then eBay backed out, and he sold it to a company called Ashford.com in 1999. How much, we don't really know, but I think it was around 2 million, something like this. Ashford.com became Timezone owner and immediately started pushing their watches to Timezone. And a lot of us left, and we went to another website called WatchNet. .com. And Ashford went bankrupt maybe a year later, and WatchNet bought Timezone out of the bankruptcy of Ashford. And then WatchNet and Timezone merged, and so we were back in charge, basically. The old guard was back in charge. And at the time, I wasn't the general manager. At the time, there was a guy called Mike Disher who was the general manager. And Mike Disher, myself, and a few other guys, Michael Sandler, of course, and one of my best friends in the industry, Michael Sandler, we kind of, we had this collector who was an investor who owned, he owned the Parcel Pro, which is a big shipping company that was insuring jewelry. We sold it all together in 2006 to Antiquorum. Antiquorum bought Timezone in 2006. Osvaldo Patrizzi bought it. So I ended up becoming the boss of Timezone. And then Osvaldo Patrizzi was let go by the shareholders of Antiquorum, and I became the head of Antiquorum. I know it's kind of weird, but I was in my mid-30s, and I became the head of Antiquorum. And I had to move to Geneva. I stayed there 4 years. I was sick and tired of the Swiss, and I want to move back to New York. And basically, Antiquorum was sold to a big investor in Asia, and they didn't care about Timezone at all. So they never invested in Timezone. They let me manage Timezone, but between 2010 and 2020, they never put a penny in Timezone. I don't know what's going on now, but it was a big problem for us because obviously the site needed to be upgraded. A lot of things had to be done. And Timezone now looks like exactly the same as it did in 1998, which is kind of fun in a way. If you want to go back the old days, you go to Timezone and you see how it happened in the old days, and it's exactly the same way. But that's basically the story of Timezone. And it was in 2010, we were one of the biggest websites in the world about watches, and now it's like a ghost of its former self.
Yeah, when Ashford bought Timezone, you're right. A lot of us took off. I went on to WatchZone.net. I don't know if you remember Terry Allison and that controversy. So I was the main forum moderator for that site, and we made that grow until TimeBeat.com bought us. And we got stock shares, penny shares that had a strike price that was way too high. They were worthless. And we all got watches, from, is it Toronto? Who owned Timebeat? I can't remember. But anyways, long story short, made that grow. But I was writing for Instinct magazine at the time. And so we were, tying in subscriptions with all kinds of contests and fun stuff like that. So yeah, it was, I wouldn't say the Wild West, but it is pretty close to being that. And it was a lot of fun. So yeah, from those days through your career into journalism, was it like me when you got into journalism? Because I believe you did do some of that. I remember I started writing on on Timezone. Richard would have contests and so forth for whiz pins, if you remember those. I had a bunch of articles already written, so I submitted some of them to magazines. I got an offer from International Watch and from InSync magazine, and I wound up writing for InSync for 6 years. How did you get into the journalism part?
It was just a natural thing where people were asking me to write about stuff, so I was doing it. I never was a natural writer, and I just wrote about stuff that I liked. So I would go to Basel, I would go see a watch, and if I liked it, I'd write about it. When I bought it, I would write about it. But I never wrote really for magazines. I may have contributed there and there for a couple of things, but I was never a steady writer besides Timezone. And then when I started managing, I didn't have time to write. And I was mostly doing editing or sending people, on invites from the brands.
Okay. Very cool. I think Bob has a couple questions.
Yeah. So thanks, first of all, for coming on and giving us some of your time today. You guys touched a lot on the early days of the online community in your career. I was taking a look at your Instagram feed, and you have quite a varied collection, including some of your own watches from Massena LAB. Curious if and how your taste in watches has changed from those early years, if at all.
That's a good question. I think a good collector is a guy who has a theme and kind of stick to it. And so I'm not a good collector. I don't have a theme and I don't stick to it. What I do is I get obsessed with something. I get obsessed with Breguet Type 20s, and I'm going to go and I'm going to buy 5 or 6 of them. I mean, I used to, because now they're very expensive, but let's say in the old days, I would go and buy 5, 6, 7, 8 of them, and that would cost me maybe 50 grand. And then I would study them and I would look at them, and then I would keep one and resell the other. And usually by reselling the others, you would pay for the one that I kept, Obviously those days are done. You cannot go and buy yourself 10 Daytona 6263s to choose the best one, or the one you like the most, and resell the others. You need a lot of cash. So now what I do is basically that was basically my MO for many years, where I would buy a lot of things, get obsessed about it, and then keep one as a memento sometimes. But I have watches in my collection that I have for 30 years, and I kept them that way. Today what I do is basically I see a watch, I like it, I buy it. I don't have a common theme. I don't get the theme thing, to be honest with you. I just like watches. I don't like themes. My taste was very much vintage in the early days, because it was so much cheaper to the modern stuff. In the late 90s, early O's, you could buy a real Blancpain 55 thumbs for $1,000, $2,000. Even 10 years ago, you could buy one for $5,000. So I was very much into that because you could buy those really historical brands for cheap. Now I'm much more into modern. I think about 15 years ago, maybe it started with Journe. We really, when I met François Paul and I started to get involved, the advantage of speaking French is you can really get involved with those guys. You can really spend time with those guys, because a lot of them don't speak English. So I went, but in the early 2000s, and even very much after 2010, I get much more involved with the independents. And now today, it's mostly independents that I collect or buy, put it this way. And it's because I spend time with those guys. I like them, Journe was the same way. I bought a lot of Journe early on because I liked him. And you could buy his watch for 60, 50 cents on the dollar. It was a different days. But today it's mostly the people, to be honest.
Yeah. Just kind of a little follow-up, wondering if you could give us some insight into how you actually got into watches in the first place. Everybody sort of has a different path, an interesting path to becoming a collector and enthusiast. Is there a moment or a particular watch that triggered that with you to start your journey?
When I got my first watch, honestly, I grew up in Switzerland. I went to school in Switzerland. Obviously, in Switzerland, you have a lot of watches around you. But back in the old days, you there were not so many watch stores and things like this. But basically, when I went to school, I went to boarding school, and my mother gave me a watch when I was 7, and she taught me how to read it, and I didn't really understand it. And I put it on, and I was very proud of the watch, and I wore the watch. Actually, I think I did a podcast with Waco where he posted a picture. I don't know, maybe it was with Ben Clymer, where we posted a picture of me with a watch in boarding school. So yeah, it basically the first watch. I was hooked.
And what was that watch?
It's Omega Seamaster 60.
Wow.
Okay, I know it sounds like a 7-year-old with an Omega. But you have to understand that 20 years ago, I mean, in 2000, an Omega Seamaster 60 was a $200 watch. 20 years ago, huh?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. We had antique stores in Montreal with the same thing. You could find, a bucket, a little shelf full of little Seamasters for $150, $200.
Yeah, it's
in all kinds of various shapes.
31 millimeter Seamaster. It's not a 38 millimeter gold Seamaster. It's a crappy little thing. And when I was 7 was 1976. So yeah, in 1976, in the middle of the quartz crisis, that watch was worth maybe $50, I don't think it was a big loss to anybody. I don't know when my mother got it, to be honest with you, but yeah.
You once said, before anything, aesthetic or otherwise, a watch is a tool. Can you tell us a little bit what you meant by that, and if you still believe that today?
Absolutely. And that's the one tenet which is very important to me. Watches are a tool to give you time, maybe a certain time zone, to maybe a timer, maybe, the different complications are tools to us. I mean, and I think it's very important that we don't lose track of that. Right now it's a big fashion of those shaped watch, weird dials, whatever. I'm fine with this. People have their own thing, but for me, watches are tools. I mean, the three of you guys are wearing tool watches. I'm wearing a tool watch too. Okay, it happens to be in gold, but it's a mono pusher, and it gives time, and it's very important to me that watches are tools. I love those micro brands and those small little brands that are tool watches. I still buy a Sin there. I bought 3 Sins last year. It's important for me that watches remain tools.
Yeah, agreed. You told a collected man once, when you began collecting, you were looking for the ultimate watch, something that would fulfill all your fantasies and desires. Do you think it was that same impulse that made you start Massena LAB?
No, that's a very good question. Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that I'm still looking for the ultimate watch, but I don't think I would be the one that would make it. But B, it helped me understand why it's a crazy quest. I'm Don Quixote, and I would never, and those watches are my windmills, in a certain way. I'm still looking for that. I think it's important. It's kind of my quest. But starting Massena LAB was more about learning about the process and, putting ideas forwards, basically.
Oh, that's a great metaphor.
Yeah, great. So on your website, there, lab in Massena LAB stands for laboratory, label, and also collaboration. Can you tell us about the origins of Massena LAB? You sort of hinted to it there, but can you elaborate a little more? And where do you see it going for the future?
So it really started out of the blue when Timezone was celebrating its 20th anniversary in 2015. We were looking back in the old days, Mark, you remember Page was doing watches that he was doing through his stores with brands. Minerva was one of them.
Yeah, the Pythagore.
Yeah, exactly. So he did a couple of anniversary watches with Minerva. He did a couple of things. I think maybe you listen out there. I don't really remember who. RGM. Thank you. Yes. So in 2015, when it was the 20th anniversary of Timezone, we thought that it would be a good idea to maybe do another watch. We hadn't done one in nearly 15 years, maybe even, maybe 15 years. So we approached a brand that I really like, which is Habring, Maria and Richard Benc. And we approached them and we did a mono pusher chronograph, the COS. I don't know if you guys are familiar. they have a watch where you turn the crown and it acts as a mono pusher. And Richard said, yeah, we'll do 20 of those. And so I designed the dial and I designed the bezel. And I really loved the process. It was really fun for me to do that. We sold the watch. It did very well. And the problem with the watch back 10 years ago was already $8,500. And a lot of people came and said, look, I cannot afford it. I would have loved to buy the watch, but I couldn't afford one at $8,500. So we thought that it was very successful. So we thought maybe we'd do a 21 anniversary, like as in I can drink now. Well, in the United States, not in Canada, but you get the idea. So we did the jumping hour, the second mort, the dead beat, with Richard on, this is something that in 2016 nobody was doing. We did a sector dial, and I designed the sector dial. I took it from an old Patek 96, actually a reference 565, and we did this, and that's sort of like I think 10 minutes, and that was phenomenal for us. So this was 2016. That was right before Watch and Wonders SIHH. We launched the watch in very early January, and SIHH was mid-January. And a lot of people at SIHH were telling me, "Oh, this is great. You should do more. You should do more. You should do more." And I was like, "Yeah, maybe I should." And I thought of it, and then Timezone didn't want to get involved anymore, and so I started Massena LAB a year later, where we did the same watch again, basically, but in bronze with a black dial. And I thought we did 50 of them instead of 21. And I thought that would take me 6 months. So I was looking at launching around Christmas 2018 and taking 6 months to sell the watch until mid 2019, and then buy something else or do something else with somebody else. And, 50 watches for me, I thought was crazy. I was going to take me a long time without Timezone support. But we sold in 5 hours, basically. So I had a big problem. In 2019, I had no watches. And we basically, the whole year, I worked on making watches for 2020 and 2021. So the whole year, I went to Switzerland. I was doing my little plans. I'm going to do this and that. And then I was very lucky. And COVID hit, and we know what happened next, and this is basically how Massena LAB started. I was extremely lucky that in 2019, I had planned big dreams for 20 and 20. So everything you saw in 2021 was planned in 2019. I was able to get the watches when nobody else were getting watches. I had people like me, it was like all this great stuff coming. And I was very lucky at the end of the day. And Massena LAB was launched like that.
Well, that's great. So you've collaborated with brands like Unimatic, all the way up to brands or independents like Sylvain Pinault. The latter collab won you the prestigious GPHG Chronograph Watch Prize in 2024. This is going to sound like a silly question after what I just mentioned, but which of your collaborations has been your favorite so far?
They're all fantastic. I mean, it's like kids, you cannot say, "Oh, this kid is better than that one."
Sure you can. I have 2 kids. No, I'm kidding. My brother-in-law is listening to this, so I'm kidding.
I like them all. They all was something to me. They're all part of me. Pinot obviously won the Grand Prix. It's a big honor. It was a big deal for us. We loved it. We struggled so much with that watch. But, Unimatic, I mean, these are my Italian brothers. We've done so many collabs together. The first one was an amazing idea, all of them. I making the craziness of having I had 70,000 people wanting 250 watches. I mean, the craziness of that, all of them. There's not one watch that I would say, oh, that wasn't, that's my favorite, or that's a collab I regret doing. Not one.
So when collaborating with micro brands like Unimatic and in high-end independents like H. Moser et Compagnie, how do you manage dealing with these 2 wildly different types of companies? How does that work with you?
Well, I have an advantage is I'm used to deal with different people. I think I really stick to the watch and really about the brand and the ethos. I try to move the ethos to a certain point. I try to move the line for those brands. Obviously, micro brands have less to lose than big brands. But at the end of the day, there's an aesthetic that comes with me, and there's a certain vision of watchmaking. And if those people agree to do a collab, we end up doing something nice. You have to realize 20% of my collabs never make it, So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, the death rate of a collab is about 20%. Right now, it's more like 25%, but yeah, on average, is about 20%. Yeah.
And how far do you get down the line by the time it gets killed?
It really depends. One brand, it was very close to launch, and that was very hard for all of us. But usually it's early stage, like before we do a prototype.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, collaborations can be for established brands and also independents alike a really quick way for them to refresh their look and their catalog. Outside of collaborations where you yourself have played a role, what ones stand out for you?
Oh, plenty. Are you in general watch brands or micro brands?
It can be either way. Ones that you think, wow, this was a fantastic collaboration. Because, sometimes collaborations can be, we switched the color of a dial and it doesn't really come off as a truly new watch. But then on the other hand, like a lot of the stuff that you have done, they've really been truly unique pieces. So I'm curious about ones where you didn't play a role. What were inspiring to you?
So I agree with you. That's a very good point. Habillage is not something that interests me. Habillage is the fact that you change the colors of a case or a dial. I'm very much interested in this. Other people do it and they do it very well, but it's not really my thing at all. I'm more interested in launching a new product. The one we did with Moser, it was a chronograph that had never done a chronograph. Besides a $50,000 chronograph with a video hash movement, my chronograph is half the price of that. And that was important for me that we do this. We had a special dial with a lot of things on it. Moser is known to do dials with nothing on it, not even the signature. I put the kitchen sink in there. I put everything. But at the end of the day, there's a lot. I mean, obviously, what Max has done with Bulgari is very impressive to me. I think Max Busser is maybe the ultimate collaborator. What he has done with Vianney Alter, with a lot of people when he was at Harry Winston. Actually, we won the GPHG this year with Sylvain, and I'm only the second American citizen to win at the GPHG. The first one was Harry Winston for another collab with Vianney Alter for the Opus 3. So it was a big honor for me that, we did this. So yeah, Max is for me the best collaborator ever. And I did a collaboration with him. We did a Lepe, we did a clock, and he's a great person to work with, I have to admit. I think that, you have, my friends at Nueha have done great things too. I think Manuel Emsch has done amazing collabs with Vianney this year, but also in the past. And that's besides the one he's done with me. I think the one he did with Keishin is amazing. The Russian guy, those animals, monsters.
Chicken, yeah.
Yeah, chicken. Sorry, yeah, chicken. I think these are great collabs.
Well, both you and Mark now have brought up the GPHG, and you're kind of in an interesting situation because you've been on both sides. You've been on the jury and you've now been a recipient. What would you say is the importance of awards like that for the industry? What do they bring to the table?
Some recognition, obviously. It's nice when people say, hey, good job. The most important for me was, and I think also for Sylvain, was a teamwork. It's for our team. You come back with a trophy, you win it for the team. It's more important internally than externally. Great, obviously, it brings a spotlight on your brands and people are more interested. But I have to admit that after 3 months, we feel that it's really the team feels that, hey, we did a great job here. We did a great product. And that's very important for us.
Yeah, recognition from your peers. That's fantastic. So we also noticed that on your website, you have branded watches under the Massena LAB banner. How are these watches going? What's the goal with the brand? And if the brand takes off, will it replace your collaboration work?
No, and I'll tell you why. Most of the Massena LAB watches are sold out, and I haven't done anything besides maybe the Pages, because the Pages watch is a collab, but it's more of a passive collab than an active collab, where I will supervise the movement construction. But I would say that the major problem I have with Massena LAB is the price range. It's very difficult to make something that interests people in the $4,000 price range. I don't want to go below, to be honest with you, because if you go below, it's very hard to get the Swiss label in certain ways. And I really want to work with Swiss people for a lot of things. I don't really want to go China for many reasons. And not so much of a quality, but more about making things by hand and, this whole process. The problem is in the $4,000 price range, people don't appreciate watches like this. They rather go in the $2,000 or in the $6,000, $7,000 price. The 3 to 4 chronograph is very hard. I did a collab with Ashford. I don't know if you guys saw that last year. We did a watch with a new brand. We did the Maxigraph. Now, that's a watch where they took a 7750 or the equivalent to the Celita, the 510, and they basically completely reworked the movement. Like crazily, it's 6.6 millimeters smaller, thinner, completely new complication on top of it, basically made by hand because I'm making only 25 of them. And it's not, I thought people would jump on this like it's the next best thing, because the margins are so thin on this one. And yet we sell them, but it's not crazy good, And when you see that people cannot appreciate a real complication at a very good price point with a really modified movement that is, unique. Nobody else can do it because they have patents on it. You're like, why bother? Why bother make another $4,000 watch in Switzerland to people that rather buy a $1,500 Chinese watch or a $7,000 Tag Heuer, which is understandable. I'm not blaming them for either. I'm not blaming them for the 1,500 or the 7. But I want to be in the 4,000 range and I want to do a Swiss movement. But it's not like, we don't get the appreciation, we don't want to do it. It's just that it's not worth it. I'd rather put my money in another cola.
I got a question, sort of 2 questions, actually, back to your own personal watch collection. Just being into watches for so long on so many different levels, is it tougher for you to get excited about watches nowadays? And then just sort of a secondary question, wondering also if you have any watches you're currently excited about that maybe are going to be new additions to the collection here this year.
Oh boy. So yes, I had a couple of things. I buy a lot of independents, so we usually take 2 or 3 years to make them, sometimes more. I'm getting very soon my Petaman Beda. I don't know if you guys are familiar with them. It's a Swiss brand. They won twice at GPHG, independent guys. They're making a bed cycle for me that should come out maybe by mid-year, and I'm very excited about it. With this, I need to dive together. Yes, so these kind of things are exciting to receive. I know I'm going to get them this year or next year. I love new stuff. Yes, I love cheap watches. I like the Isotop, for example. This is something that if I see one, I get really excited about. Believe it or not, yesterday I saw my friend George Benford release a maybe $2,000 diver watch in ceramic, different colors. I love that watch. I may get one of those. I don't know which color. That's the problem. I like the blue one, and I like the khaki one, the olive color one, the military one. So I may get both. I don't know. But that I get excited by this stuff. I get excited by small independent stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of things I get excited about. I go to the Timezone event in New York. I see stuff that I like. I get excited all the time. There's really no snobism for me. I get actually more excited about $1,000 watches than $100,000 watches, to be honest, because obviously it doesn't hurt the wallet the same way. I like them all, and it's pretty rare that I don't like the watch. It's pretty rare.
Yeah. Speaking of exciting, and inexpensive, that new Fears collaboration with Studio Underdog with their sapphire dial with the lume at $1,200 US. I can't believe it's that cheap, and that's a really neat collaboration. They didn't reinvent anything, but they brought the Studio Underdog dial technique, that neat design into a Fears cushion case. And again, priced at a very reasonable, attractive price. Good for them. Good for both of them. I'm very impressed.
Yeah. The giblets, that's the name of the watch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it too. I saw it yesterday. Yeah, Richard, they both do a great job. I think Richard is a very talented guy. I spent some time with him over in China together because we both did a collab with Moser. He did, so we did a little tour. We went all over Asia. So Richard and I spent, I think, a week in Asia together, and we had a blast. Honestly, he's a very talented guy, very funny. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, unfortunately, he didn't come to the Toronto Timepiece show. His brand was there. He had some representatives, but he couldn't make it himself. I didn't get to meet him. I did get to meet Nicholas from Fears. He was at the show, and he was at the Red Bar the week before, so I got to spend some time with him. I don't think there's anybody any more dapper than Nicholas from Fears in the industry. I was wearing a button-down cotton shirt and felt a little underdressed. But yeah, this super, super nice guy. One last question from me. Of all the brands you've worked with and the future brands you're going to be working with, are there any that you haven't worked with yet that it's like your holy grail, your dream partnership out there? Who would those brands be? What's with
Rolex, Patek, of course.
Oh yeah, Patek. No, forget that. Rolex Massena LAB. I would love that. That'd be. Why? What would you do to a Rolex? Like, just throw something out there.
To Rolex, I will do a 6062 for sure. So this is the triple day with the wood face.
Yeah. The old school.
Yeah.
Basically a Cellini kind of thing.
Exactly. Well, they kind of did it when they did that wood face watch in 2017. But I would do it the right way in the oyster case.
The right way.
Yeah. I like that watch. Actually, I considered buying one. I didn't, but I may actually one day. But yeah, I kind of like those old school watches, and then I wouldn't mind doing one of the 3D photographs also. I think they're cool watches. Yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah, without the crown guards, old school.
Yeah, old school. Yeah.
Cool. Maybe you could bring in Swatch and make a plastic version of it too.
You can't do that.
I think you mean bioceramic, Bob.
Yeah, not plastic. Well, William, I want to thank you very much for the time you gave us today. I know you're very busy and you got a hard out in a couple of minutes. Thank you very much. Your generosity is greatly appreciated. Can you tell our audience where they can find you online? Should you wish to have them check out your social networks and all that stuff?
Sure. So the website is massenalab.com, MASSENALAB.com. You can find my own personal watch Instagram. It's The Real Massena, and the website and the Instagram is Massena LAB. I think that's it. I think that's all we do. Maybe we have a Facebook page. I'm not so sure. I have to answer stuff, but I'm not a Facebook guy. I'm an Instagram guy.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah. And you can always contact me on Instagram like Mom did. And I usually answer people back.
I really appreciate it. Thank you again, William. And thank you all for listening. Our show goes out twice a month on Mondays, and it can be found on Instagram. I'm at Mark Time to Watch. Bob is at Time to Go 1978. And Brent is at Caliber 321. Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you in 2 weeks, and see you again on Time to Calibrate podcast.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers. Bye-bye, everybody.